South Africa's case, it's definitely an interesting and historic case, right? And it's a case that is followed by many states and many citizens in different countries. The interests of this case, what is the influence of international humanitarian law? How does it really influence different nation states? So South Africa and Israel are both members of the United Nations. They are also bound by the conventions, by the rules within the United Nations. The International Court of Justice, whenever there is disputes between these nation states, whether these disputes are about violations of human rights, killings unfairly of children, issues of humanitarian support, disputes that are lodged with the court, it becomes now the responsibility of the court to resolve those disputes. Now, South Africa has actually put up allegations and a dispute against Israel to say they've committed genocide, which is the killing of thousands within Palestine, and also the violations of the rights of parents, pregnant women, children. That's the issue. And the evidence that you see in the clip being presented was presented by the councils and the advocates of South Africa to show what is the genocide that has been committed by Israel. And Israel is supposed to respond to those allegations, and then we wait for the outcomes of the court, which may affect the war.
The implications, right, of the implications of the International Court of Justice, I'm not sure if you guys have thought about this, but that's one thing that I thought about. Okay, so South Africa goes there. What if the court then says, yes, Israel has committed genocide? Then what then?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a number of implications that can be involved. For instance, I think in South Africa, the EFF had tried to implement one of those implementations, which were, sanctions against Israel.
So sanctions.
Sanctions against Israel, the same way that there was repatriation in the genocides that had happened in Hitler's time. So there would be repatriation for the loss of life of those people, both financially and otherwise. Obviously, jail time for is it 5 or 6 members that are implicated that were stated, the prime minister, the president, and the like. So it would be jail time for those. And naturally, then it would
so people could go to jail.
Yes,
which jail?
What do you mean?
Like, wait, where? Like,
you get tried now because genocide is a criminal act in the International Criminal Court. So that's where they would be tried. To my
question is, like, is there like, I know it doesn't really matter, but is there like an international jail that they would?
It's actually a good question, because everyone wants to know.
Because if they committed a crime in South Africa, we know would send them to a jail in South Africa. But where do they go? These 4 or 5.
Yeah, a lot of people are tried in their own countries where the act happened, because what happens is you have to be tried in the country in which that act happened. But now that it's an public international law, opens that door openly, and the UN can come in and they can be tried at The Hague. And once they are tried and punished for whatever, then they can be jailed in their own countries.
In their own countries.
They can serve time in their own countries, yes.
Imagine Putin serving time in his own country. There was a whole thing.
Where else would he be tried? Because if he serves time in America, he's dead tomorrow.
I mean, who would arrest Putin in his own country? I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this.
No,
thing.
I hear you, and it's a fair question. I mean, a lot of people are asking themselves that question. And I mean, for me, honestly, who gets arrested? Something that I've been thinking about. In 1948, Israel gains their independence. This war has been going on for quite some time. But I think that's where, and if you hear some of the articulations that Tungqai Tobi was making around the time of 48, it's where all of this war intensified. And from there on, it has been happening in the Gaza Strip for a number of years, where obviously the border is both Egypt and I think towards the north, it's Israel. But it's still one of the 2 Palestine states. And that's where it intensified as a territorial war, and secondly as a racist / genocidal war.
Let me ask you a stupid question. What's the war about?
The war is definitely about land.
Initially,
Yes.
it was about land, but you can go on.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are right. There are other interests at play. You can expound as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to wars, there's always, I would say, the invisible hand. There's always other countries at the background which are almost like putting oil to the fire. And these are the countries that are causing tensions to be there between these countries, and who are always sort of like delaying coming to an agreement. If you look at, like you've said, the Russia-Ukraine war, there's external parties. This war between Israel and Palestine, there's external parties. But it is about identity. It is about ownership of your own land. It is about reclaiming and rewriting history. And so those issues are at play. There's also, for me, issues of religion that are at play. You see this even in the rhetoric that is being used in the war, where people would take statements from the Quran, they would speak against Israel. Also on the other side, we would see Israel using statements from the Bible to speak up against Palestine. So there's also almost like ethnic and also division in terms of religions that are also at play within this war.
That's crazy.
No, I think you've definitely covered it. There were Jim Crow laws in America that oppressed black people from ownership of property, land, and the like. So in the areas in which Palestinians existed, you wouldn't sell property to them. You know, they wouldn't gain access to a number of things. And that's how you marginalize the people of Palestine existing within these small Israeli, spaces of occupation. And it's become so difficult to really understand the root cause of this particular war because it's been so diluted, over the years. That's why I say initially it was over territory and land. But over the years, it's become such a racially, ethnically, religiously motivated war that keeps on going on, and it dies down for a number of time. But then obviously, like I say, there are forces at play that keep externalizing and feeding this, because at the end of the day, what you must also understand is that Arab countries are largely resourced as well. So there is an economic benefit to the Gaza Strip.
Is
not
it
just
the
in
oil
terms of
thing or
territory.
what?
There are a number of interests, both natural resources as well as just people fighting for identity and staking claim to this particular strip.
All right.
Because that's where the heart of the actual warfare
It's the
is.
Gaza Strip,
It's Gaza.
which is a piece of land
Yes.
that people are fighting over. Like, who does it? Does it belong to Israel or does it belong to Palestine? Is that the...
That's one of the main issues that is the reason why the war is going on, because when it comes to Palestinians, they want to be recognized as a nation state.
Sure.
And Israel is not in support of that.
So what are they currently if they're not a nation state?
Well, their rights are very much limited in terms of where they are. The Israelites are in charge. The Israelite armies are also involved in terms of looking after their minerals, their wealth, their resources. So they are not taking decisions concerning their own land. And that's where the main issues are. And when it comes to Israel, they've always maintained that they are looking for a solution, but they've never given the Palestinians a solution. And that's why the war is unending. It's Israel's always maintained that they are for peace, but you never see peace coming to the table and being negotiated in good faith. And that's one of the main reasons that the war continues even up until this day.
Some interesting people for me that have come out before we move on to another thing. I think the reason why this is important, just on a basic level, is so that the lay person can get an understanding of like what is this thing about, because it's all over the news, and I think there are lots of people like me who don't really understand like what is the war about, what are the implications of whatever, in inverted commas, prayer that South Africa is making to the International Court of Justice. But I think some time ago, Mukhweng came out and he was a pro-Israel type of person. Am I correct? I think I saw something like that. I'm not sure if you know anything about that, but...
Yeah, if you can recall, he has been making biblical statements.
Sure.
Right? If you were to look at the Bible is pro-Israel. I mean, even God in the Bible is called the God of Israel.
Sure.
So when it comes to those of the Christian faith, they tend to take a pro-Israel approach in their statements. They speak for the prosperity of Israel. They speak for the peace of the land of Israel. And the issue that often comes into play is that the foreign policy of the South African government is not in favor of the actions of Israel. That's the main issue. You would have also remembered there was also a pageant where the former Miss South Africa, Ulalela,
Miss Universe, that was happening in
yes,
Israel,
had to go to and represent South Africa. And that pageant was going to be held in Israel, right? And the issues of the government was that we can't send one of us to represent us in Israel when we are not in favor.
In a state where we
and so
condemn.
the
Which government?
The South African government withdrew the support and she went there on her own.